Be ready for anything else.
Welcome to New Zealand, home of glorious public landscapes, steep slopes, plenty of wild critters, friendly locals, a lot of rain, and some of the biggest red stag on the planet. If you've ever dreamed of visiting New Zealand, you're in good company. But while most people come here in search of breathtaking vistas, hiking, biking, and hobbit holes, we're headed somewhere a little rougher, deep into the South Island backcountry.
Bloody hell.
Years ago, I met Ian at an R3 conference for conservation agencies, and within an hour of talking, we realized we were basically two brothers separated by 8,000 miles of land and ocean. Born and raised in New Zealand, Ian invited us to experience a side of the country most tourists never see. So Allison and I packed our gear, flew halfway across the world, and joined Ian and his son for a week of hunting, fishing, camping, and conservation work.
Go and have a look and see if we can find a bit of game.
Ooh, I've already found the goat.
We found the goats.
Just hanging around,
Yeah, there's a couple of them up there.
It doesn't take long to realize conservation in New Zealand means something a little different than it does back home. A lot of the animals roaming these mountains, goats, deer, even possums, weren't originally supposed to be here. Some were brought for farming, others for sport hunting or fur trading. And over time, many became a serious problem for New Zealand's native ecosystems. So, as we set off from camp in search of deer for meat and chamois up high, we also carried the mindset of doing our part to help control invasive species.
Here's a plonker in there.
Coming from Kansas, Allison and I also learned pretty quickly that New Zealand mountain country has a way of humbling flatlanders. While walking on a slope was challenge enough on its own, the mountains seemed intent on testing the uninitiated. The thick tussock grasses that looked solid enough to stand on turned out to be about as trustworthy as ice. As we worked our way towards a distant beech forest below camp, we caught our first glimpse of a fallow deer, a doe feeding high above us along the slope.
He's only a young one, but there's plenty here, so it's no problem with taking one.
But with the high ground in her favor, she had eyes on us as well. And before I could get settled in behind a rifle, she melted back into the countryside. With daylight fading quickly behind the towering mountain slopes, we turned our attention back toward the beech forest below, and the next task at hand, setting traps for possums.
This is something you've talked about many times. What is the deal with the possums?
Well, yeah, the possums were introduced here in like the 1860s, and they really did get away because there's no predators here. So the brush-tailed possums that are here were imported from Australia for the fur and the pelt trade.
Okay.
When they got here, they obviously bred like rabbits, so to speak,
Yeah.
and really got away into.
And we've been seeing them just driving.
Yeah.
Just roadkill because they're everywhere.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, so
That's great.
they're regarded as a pest. I mean, they've eaten a lot of native bush, and they've and they eat birds' eggs and native, of the native birds. So they are considered a sort of a predator of the New Zealand biodiversity. But now there's actually a actual fur fibre trade where you take the fur off the possum without the pelt, and it actually is blended with merino wool and made into high quality garments.
What Ian's referring to is possum merino, a blend of possum fiber and merino wool. Merino is already one of the most prized natural fabrics in the world, and in a country with more sheep than people, it's everywhere. Adding possum fiber turns an invasive species into a usable resource, something I'd like to see more of instead of relying so heavily on synthetics.
He kind of goes up on the tree.
He goes up on the tree, back leg, nice and heavy. So these are leg hold traps. They'll hold them without breaking their leg.
Okay.
So they won't humane. You've got to check them every 24 hours, so we'll be doing that. Put it in the ground like that. Keep the chain well covered. And then we've got some lure here. This is a mixture of flour and icing sugar.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, with a bit of Chinese 5 spice in there. So it's got aniseed and whatever the other 4 spices are. I can't remember. So you want to put the blaze up the tree like that. They come out overnight. They're nocturnal, the possums, so they won't be there. So they'll come along, they'll see that, they'll walk along here, and he put his back foot in there. Got him.
After setting the traps, we caught sight of those same fallow does once again feeding along the slope. For a moment, it looked like we might finally get an opportunity, but no matter how I shifted for a shot, there always seemed to be a branch, a rock, or a narrow opening that just didn't feel right. On the first evening of a 4-day hunt, the last thing I wanted to do was force a bad opportunity. So with daylight fading fast, we backed out and headed for camp. The following morning, we trekked up from camp in search of a change in scenery. While the 3 of us had spent the previous evening heading downstream to set possum traps, Ian's son Jack had scouted upstream, where he'd spotted a healthy number of fallow deer feeding in the valley. The sounds echoing overhead belonged to a bird known as the kia, a native alpine parrot considered to be one of the smartest birds on Earth. As excited as Allison and I were about the chance to see one up close, Ian seemed equally thankful we never had any real encounters with them. Mostly because kia are known for tearing apart unattended camping gear. But while our attention kept drifting toward the noise above, Ian's attention was fixed on piecing together a plan for the stalk ahead.
What we're trying to do, because they're just up on their face there, is we'll try and stick to the creek, I think. And try and just keep an eye on them as we go round the corner. And see if we can get sort of into a range when lines up where we can sneak up a bit closer. Get you up into a shooting position. Sounds good.
While hunting in the mountains was something I had little experience with, using the steep banks of creeks and streams to move unseen through the landscape brought back memories of stalking turkeys back home. What we didn't expect, though, was finding an entirely different herd of fallow deer, much closer than the ones we'd originally spotted.
Some game here, Jack.
Setting up along a bend in the creek, I settled in behind the rifle and took aim. But unfortunately, it didn't connect. We sat back and watched, trying to figure out exactly where the deer had gone after my missed shot. We never saw them climb back up the mountain, but we knew they disappeared somewhere in the draw above. Then, out of nowhere, the same group came charging over the slope right in front of us. Impact. This time, the shot found its mark. But instead of scattering back up the mountain, the herd came barreling straight towards us. Jack and I scrambled to line up another shot as deer poured over the slope, but they managed to move through too quickly to get another opportunity.
Yeah, good.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
It's exciting.
It's not uncommon for them just like to start moving forward like that. It's just,
They hear the impact behind them.
yeah.
Don't have that big paddle yet. Does that happen at a certain year or anything like that?
I've been a lot older.
Yeah.
Amid all the commotion, the original fallow deer we'd spotted earlier on the mountainside pushed back into view, giving Jack an opportunity of his own. And just like that, we suddenly had 2 deer ready for harvest.
So this is truly a New Zealand public land fallow. I don't think I've mentioned that.
That's right.
And that's what makes it even more special, even if it's not, it's not a massive representative or anything for fallow deer, but that is cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of public land hunting in New Zealand, and it's pretty freely accessible for people who want to sort of a do-it-yourself hunt. So it's not impossible to do. And just in the same way that we've done, where in this case we've booked a block, it never cost anything. There's no money involved.
Really?
So know that we have it to ourselves for 3 days, and we can come in here and we're not flying in on anyone else or
Disrupting someone else's
hunt.
hunt.
Yeah, but it's been easy to get, and anybody could do it. But it's public land, so you don't expect to see big trophies that are well fed. But
when you do, it's that much more special,
Oh, when you do, then that's fantastic. I mean, we're not doing any harm to the population by taking out either younger animals or hinds or yearlings in this case, because there's plenty here.
We've been here for 2 days and we've saw dozens, at this point.
Plenty, exactly, yeah.
Goats and fallow deer and that's pretty crazy.
Haven't seen the chamois that we're after, but
I know.
We need to keep looking. We'll keep looking.
Sure.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you again. It's
You're
been
welcome.
fun, and we gotta go check our possum traps.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's the next job.
Yeah, good.
A half hour later, with venison strapped to our packs, we turned downhill and started the walk back towards camp.
G'day everyone, it's Jack here, the MDO's Kiwi correspondent. I'm up here, way up in the hills of New Zealand, and I mean, it's a pretty beautiful spot. You may be asking why am I up here? Well, it's because I had a crack at a deer over here, and it ran all the way around these faces here, and ended up in this wee basin just above me, and now it's on the ground behind me. So, pretty successful morning out. Peace.
With our fresh meat tucked beside our snow-fed stream cooler, the mountains already felt a little more generous than they had the evening before. But the day wasn't over yet. As the afternoon light started slipping towards the evening, we still needed to check the possum traps we'd set the night before. But we didn't make it far. Right outside camp, our attention shifted toward a group of feral goats moving across the hillside.
Got
Here in New Zealand, animals like goats exist without natural predators that would normally help keep populations in balance. So instead, much of that responsibility falls to hunters and agency teams working to manage the landscape through conservation work. In the end, these animals were a human-introduced problem, and one that now requires a human-powered solution. Still, walking up to that billy goat, there was no shortage of respect for the animal itself.
This is a prime example of those New Zealand feral goats, I suppose, but there's probably a bunch of different species or different horn types and all that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's just so bizarre that these guys have just been wandering around ever since we got here. And they are everywhere. So, conservation at work, I suppose, hey?
Yep.
So you can actually age these guys based off of rings on their horns?
Sure can. These sort of grow in stages as they come out of the skull. So, and often you'll see like a winter check. So where they've had a hard winter, there'll be the growth rates will slow down for the horns.
Okay.
So, and this is the same with tar and chamois to an extent as well. So this one you can see that the first year they grow a sort of a series of sort of stubs like that, and then as a 2-year-old it would have come to here, so you can see a little
you can
round
see
there.
the break there, yeah.
Yeah, and then another one here,
3.
and then this one here with the next winter. So talking about 1, 2, 3 and a half years old. Yeah, something like that.
Not long after our run-in with the goats, we reached our possum traps we'd set the evening prior and found out that one of them had paid off.
Well, one of our traps worked out anyway. We got one possum, and we do need to be a bit quick about showing how the hair is removed after catching it, right? So
Yeah, you got about a minute after they die that the hair follicle lets go, and then you can just grab
oh
the.
wow, look at that in clumps.
You feel the warmth of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what they're mixing with the merino wool.
This is what they're mixing with the merino.
to make the merino wool a lot softer and close
Yep.
it. So
Yep.
sure.
But it's a good way to make use of a pest, though, isn't it? You know, it's
Yeah, no, I mean,
more people should be doing this. Take that. That's actually pretty light, so
yeah.
you
So
can carry that. It's not even part of the weight of the pellet. So.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, how many make a kilogram of?
About 15 to 18 possums.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we'll make a kilogram of fur. But we make use of what we can.
Yeah, and that's what's important. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
After a full day in the mountains, sleep came easy, and before long, morning had us headed out once again, but with a new plan on the horizon. The original goal of camping in these mountains was to hunt an alpine goat antelope known as the chamois, or chamois, brought over from Austria in 1907. But by day 3, we still hadn't even laid eyes on one. So with Ian leading the way, we set our sights on a nearby peak and started the climb towards higher elevation. Our route began back in the same beech forest we'd trapped possums in the days prior. But there's a big difference between briefly stepping into a forest and relying on it as your route through the mountains.
We've hit a big valley and we have to turn around and find a way to cross it and go back up.
Yeah. And we'll just go back down here so we're not hanging over this bluff, I think.
Beneath the towering beech trees, the forest floor was littered with the remnants of generations past. Saplings grew tightly together beneath the canopy, but only a handful would ever reach maturity, leaving the rest to wither away and slowly return to the soil. The result was a forest floor that often felt suspended more than solid, held together by roots, decay, and loose alpine earth. Every step uphill demanded careful footing, making sure not to put too much weight on ground that could easily give way beneath you.
So what's today? It's about a 1,500 foot vertical climb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's no small mission.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, so got to put one foot in front of the other for that. This bit of forest doesn't look too bad. We'll just do some angle climbing up here.
Reaching the edge of the tree line, the whole landscape began to change. The vegetation at this altitude became harsher and more resilient. The sort of stuff even the goats seemed hesitant to eat. And the kind you only grabbed onto if you were truly desperate for footing. Between traversing these exposed slopes, we duck back into the shade whenever possible, using the breaks to glass the mountains above for signs of life. And occasionally finding ourselves face to face with a few cheeky residents. You could say we caught him on the wrong hoof, because that retreat may have been slightly less graceful than he intended. Back in the United States, a climb like Angel's Landing is often treated as a tourist challenge of courage. But out here, there were no chains, no guardrails, and no clearly marked paths, just loose mountainside and one careful step after another. And hey, I'll admit, up here, I found myself battling a fear of heights I hadn't really encountered before. But once we reached the summit, the views spoke for themselves. Breaking for lunch, we spent the better part of an hour glassing the surrounding mountainsides. But despite the elevation and the effort, there was still no sign of a chamois. Just as we were about to pack up and begin the long hike back down, Jack spotted a small group of goats we'd been watching on the slope below. Nearing 400 yards, this shot would be a true test of skill and preparation. With his scope dialed in, he settled behind the rifle and took aim. It seems like that practice has paid off. As the afternoon sun settled toward the horizon, we'd conquered a small mountain peak and added another goat to the tally. We still hadn't laid eyes on a wandering chamois, but that goal would have to wait. For now, all we had to think about was how in the world we were going to make it back down. With only a few hours before being airlifted back out of the mountains, we set off on one final trek upstream, hoping for a final opportunity at another deer. Reaching our glassing point, we scanned the surrounding hillsides and quickly picked up movement along a familiar slope. Meanwhile, a few larger fallow bucks fed high above us in the distance. But thanks to Jack, the real reward that morning came in the form of a long-awaited guest we'd yet to encounter. A chamois. Perched nearly 3 times higher than we'd climbed the day before, there was simply no chance of reaching them in time. And judging by the state of our legs, I'm not sure any of us, besides maybe Jack, were eager to try. So for a while, we sat back and watched them pick their way across the mountainside. Eventually, we made our way toward the hillside we'd spotted the fallow deer on. But by the time we'd arrived, we'd lost sight of them entirely. With our original target gone, we turned our attention back toward removing a few more goats for conservation.
That second one absolutely hopeless.
Ironically, as the shots echoed across the valley, they stirred up the very deer we'd spent the morning searching for, giving Jack one final opportunity before it was time to head back to camp.
I'm back again, and there's a bit of a trend forming here. Every time I'm on camera, my 2 new American friends going back to camp, we had done a bit of conservation work, knocked over a few goats, and a little spiker jumped out of the tussock and it's ran behind me once again. And they've gone back to camp, and old Jack here is putting on an absolute clinic. Choice. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, man, protein's on. Time for a wee walk down there. Let's go.
Looking back at our time in the mountains, it became clear pretty quickly that the hunt itself had only been one small part of the experience. Somewhere between the alpine climbs, long evenings around camp with friends, and the quiet beauty of the surrounding mountains, the backcountry of New Zealand had a way of slowing down life and making you appreciate just how wild this part of the world still is. And after 4 days living among it, it's safe to say the mountains had left their mark on us. Watching them disappear beneath the helicopter, it was hard not to wonder when or if we'd ever find ourselves back in this valley again. But our time in New Zealand was far from over. With the truck pointed north, we began following the rugged western coastline, trading alpine camps for temperate rainforests, winding roads, tourist stops, and eventually, the pursuit of a local river monster still lurking somewhere ahead.